Could all those cliche, annoying people that tell us to eat a big, hearty breakfast actually be right? Oh my gosh, I guess I need to delete my entire channel. Wildly enough, there is compelling science that shows that eating the bulk of your calories in the morning seems to end up having a powerful effect with your overall weight loss. Well, could this work with intermittent fasting? I mean, most of us with intermittent fasting, we think we fast throughout the day and we start eating in the evening time, which works for a lot of us. However, we start to realize that we don't make the best decisions in the evening time. Now, here's the interesting thing. There's two sides to this equation. We have sort of the potential like metabolic changes that occur in the evening that make it so that maybe the food that we eat in the evening is making us gain more weight. That certainly applies. But then there's also these other psychological and emotional components. So what I'm going to explain here is why we gain weight when we eat in the evening time. And it's not because we're just storing the fat magically or storing the carbs as fat. Okay, hear me out on this. Hey, I do want to make sure you check out Zero Fasting. If you are into intermittent fasting, it is an awesome app. Totally free, and the reason I mention it is because I have a bunch of content on that app, so we go into detail with like what breaks a fast, what doesn't break a fast, sleep schedules, this and that. So highly recommend you check it out. They also have a premium version as well, which I linked down below, so you can check it out on the App Store. It's called Zero Fasting. Myself, Dr. Peter Attia, some other well-known people in the fasting community are a part of this app. Anyhow, highly recommend. Check it out. 2 links down below for the free one and also to try the premium version. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Nutrition Research. It took a look at 59 people, and it found that the subjects that ate closer to bedtime generally gained more weight. Well, was it metabolically driven or was it kind of emotionally, psychologically driven? Well, let's look a little bit further. Another study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that people that ate later, like after 11 p.m., on average consumed 500 calories more per day than those that didn't. And it's not just because they were awake longer, eating more during that time. These are just people who had their whole like pattern shifted and skewed. Well, let's break down why this might happen, because that is a very clear line. 500 calories is legit. It doesn't take long to put on 10 pounds doing that, okay? So what's going on if you're eating later? And what does this mean for you if you're intermittent fasting and most of your calories are stacked into the evening? That, to me, that's a red flag, right? I purposely switch my fasting and eating periods so that I'm not having to eat at night, but I'll talk more about that later. Let's look at what does this. I think for a lot of the population, part of the culprit here is the need to have like a light breakfast. We feel that we feel better when we have a light breakfast, when in reality, you'd almost be better just not eating breakfast at all. These light breakfasts, just this marketing behind it is implying that we need to have a small breakfast. And that's going to make it so that just by the nature of the beast, most of our calories are allocated to the back half of the day, which ends up meaning most of our food choices are being made when we're exhausted and tired at the end of the day. So it's kind of like which came first, right? So I eat a light breakfast and then I get on through the day and I'm like, oh crud, I've only had 300 calories today and it's 3 p.m. But technically I'm supposed to be getting 2,500 calories because calories are the almighty thing, right? So suddenly I start wolfing down food and I have all kinds of different hormonal responses that come as a result of that because I'm tired, I'm making bad decisions because I've been tired from my day. You see where I'm going with this? So consuming light breakfast and pushing everything back, it isn't the fact that we're necessarily consolidating all this food and what it's doing metabolically. It's more about our decision-making process during that time, and we don't even realize it. The whole calorie allotment thing is destroying us. We feel like we have to consume X amount of calories, so we try to fit that budget. We try to maximize that budget, okay? So then at the end of the day, the other piece that comes into the equation is boredom. We're home. We're not busy anymore. Okay, the day goes by fast. The evenings kind of go by a little bit slow. We're busy with our kids, but and then we're bored. Then all of a sudden we're sitting there and we just want to eat. But the other one that really just gets missed a lot is the actual effect of a stressful day. Okay, we don't just grab satiating, snacky foods because we're just stressed out and it's just what we do. Cortisol actually does something. Cortisol increases something known as tryptophan oxygenase, which oxidizes and utilizes tryptophan. Tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin. So what ends up happening is because our cortisol levels are elevated, it incinerates tryptophan, which would normally create serotonin and help us feel good. So guess what happens? We're low in serotonin and we don't feel good. So you know what we do? we go with this pleasure-seeking behavior of trying to get pleasure from food, because food does trigger a serotonin release. You know what else triggers a serotonin release temporarily? Sugar. So we end up craving sugar. We don't even realize it. We're just indirectly trying to fill the serotonin need because our serotonin is getting zapped by a cortisol oxidizing tryptophan. Wild, right? Now, indirectly, we're also affecting our sleep and having all kinds of issues there. So when we end up eating later, what happens is insulin spikes, which is normal, and that affects our melatonin levels, and our melatonin levels end up plummeting, so we don't sleep good. And then guess what happens? Then the entire signaling process is thrown out of whack and everything becomes a vicious circle. So the Journal of Steroids, no, not those kind of steroids, it looks at everything as far as hormones and steroids, hormones and all that stuff goes, published a study that found that those that ate a 600 calorie breakfast versus a 300 calorie breakfast ended up actually losing more weight and having less cravings throughout the course of the day. So what does this mean? Does this mean you should get up and have a big breakfast? Well, kind of. It doesn't mean you should have a big breakfast, but it does mean that the bulk of your calories probably want to come in before, noon or 12 p.m. if that's the case. Now, what does that really look like? It could look like this. You wake up in the morning, you're fasted because you stopped eating at like 5, 6, 7 p.m. So you're already in 12 hours in a fasted state. You go and you work out. You get the benefit of being deeper in a fast, and then you have your breakfast after your fast. And it looks something like maybe a high-fat ketogenic coffee or maybe a high-fat low-carb meal that's going to get you the calories, but not necessarily the bulk, right? It gives you the calories, but not the physical bulk of food. Meaning your caloric intake, the ratio of what you need to accumulate later in the day is not as bad. So you end up making better choices when you're tired. So the big caveat here is that you're starting your fast, whether you're intermittent fasting or just not eating after dinner, you're starting that a little bit earlier. So let me give you an example. If you stop eating at 6 p.m. and then you get up at 6 a.m. and you work out and you don't end up eating until 8 a.m., you're still fasting for 14 hours. You're still like almost all the way to a 16-hour fast. But it's so easy to think like, oh, I had this big breakfast. Well, you had this big breakfast after 14 hours of not eating. Compare that to eating at 10 p.m., even one little snack, right? 10 p.m. Then you get up at 6, and then you eat at 8. You just only fasted for, do the math, right? You're fasting for a lot less time. Okay, you're fasting for 10 hours instead of 14. So it's all about shifting everything and not being afraid of having a big breakfast if late night eating is a problem for you. If you're intermittent fasting, it's a tremendous strategy to stop eating at 5, 6 p.m. and then break your fast at like 10 a.m. I mean, that's a perfect setup right there. You're in a great spot to be able to still get the benefits of intermittent fasting, but still have a big-ish breakfast. You're still having the same eating window. You're just bumping it a little bit versus not eating until lunch, which is what most people do. And if you want to ask me, it's kind of a lazy thing. We skip breakfast and we just do that. And it's easy, but then you end up forcing yourself to develop these habits of eating later. So could it be that all the issues that we see with sleep and intermittent fasting have to do with the fact that people are compressing their eating into the evening time? Food for thought. I'll see you tomorrow.